In this video, we will learn how to create charges for your drivers. Charges are going to be the deductions, reimbursements, and earnings that will also be reflected on the driver's settlements. Typically, you will be adding these charges under the driver's profile, but there will be other ways to add them depending on your situation, whether you need them to be associated to orders or added at the last minute. Let's go under a driver's profile for our first example. From your landing page, you can open up the driver's list and then open up the driver's profile that you want to make your charges. On the left-hand side, you will see a tab for charges that will only be associated to this driver. Here you will see a list of all one-time charges and recurring charges broken down to each time they were generated. At the top left, you'll be able to create new charges for the driver by clicking on the Add button. You will also be able to edit and delete charges accordingly by highlighting the charge and selecting the appropriate button. Let's create a new one-time charge by clicking Add. This will open a new intermediate window that will let you define how much, when, and what this charge is for. First, you need to select the type of charge. This will be from a deduction that will be decreasing the amount of the pay, a reimbursement where you can reimburse drivers for anything they may have paid for, such as fuel and lumpers, or earnings, which can be any bonus or extra pay they are receiving, for example, for additional work, extra miles, unloading a trailer, and more. If you have a deduction selected, you can associate this to an escrow or advance where you can keep track of the balance totals. As you can see, the totals for them are visible at the top right of the Charges tab. If it is not associated to an escrow or advance balance, you can leave the subtype section empty. For more information on how escrow and advances work, please see that respective video. The next field, you will have a charges code section where you can select a code that is a predefined set of instructions to select the correct following fields of invoicing company and expense account. This is typically only used in larger companies where users without accounting knowledge or access will need to create a charge and can simply do this by selecting this code. For example, lumpers, detention, and others would be used for this purpose. Please see the charges code video on how to set these up. Next, you will be selecting or confirming your invoicing company that this charge is associated from. If you only have one company under your umbrella, this will be selected by default. This invoicing company will dictate what list of expense accounts you'll be choosing from in the following field. These will be all the expense accounts imported from the QuickBooks account associated to the invoicing company. Again, you can start typing the name of the account and select the match, or click on the magnifying glass and select from the list. Please make sure the correct expense account is selected to make the proper QuickBooks association for accounting purposes. In the Distribute field, you will be putting the amount that you would like associated to this one-time charge. In the Date field, you'll be selecting the date that you want this transaction to be listed on for any settlements that will include it. The description will be the note that will be listed as an explanation on the settlement as to what this charge is for. When you click OK, you will see the new charge saved in the list with all of the information that was just input. Again, you will be able to sort and filter this list as with other lists in the TMS by filtering column headers, searching, adjusting the order and visibility of the columns, and exporting the data as well. Now we will create a recurring charge. Here you can see a very similar setup as the one-time charges. We will have to fill out type, subtype, invoicing company, and expense account in the same way. You will have additional subtypes available for recurring deductions. These will be for equipment leasing and reefer deductions. Please see those respective videos for how those deductions function. Next, you will fill out the rate, which will be the amount taken each time this charge is made. Then you will have the ability of creating a charge limit based on a dollar amount or the numeric amount of times it is to be charged. Here, for example, the charge will stop being taken once it has charged a total of $2,000. If we change to numeric and input our number of times, here, for example, the charge will stop once it has been charged 10 times. So in this example, a total of $500 would be the same. Next, you are inputting the start date for the transaction. This can also be backdated. If you have a specific end date, you can input that also. Otherwise, the charge will keep being taken as time goes on or until the charge limit is met. You can leave this blank in that case. Now you will be selecting the frequency of the charge in the recurring field by selecting from weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Then you can select the day of the week that it's going to be charged in the charge day field. Finally, you will be putting the reason for the charge in the description field, which will also be visible on the driver's settlements. Click OK to save or cancel to discard. You will see this charge now listed in a new row here in the Recurring Charges tab. You will also see the one-time charges associated to this recurring charge broken down in the Main Charges tab. As you can see, there the Recurring Charge ID column is filled out for those charges associated to a recurring charge. You will also have one shortcut under the Recurring Charges tab to create a charge for all drivers or a specific driver type. You can select from all drivers, company drivers, owner ops, or lease purchase drivers. Here you will be selecting the same fields for a normal recurring charge, but with an extra warning on the bottom to make sure you have not clicked this by accident. If you click OK, it will save the charge with the same details under all of those drivers' profiles. One more place you can add charges will be under the orders themselves for charges tied to those specific orders. For example, if you are paying for an extra stop or reimbursing for a lumper or detention time, you can do this by opening an order that has a driver connected to it, whether this be from the orders list or order planning screen. Remember, you can also access all drivers' orders from their profile if you have the permissions as well from the General tab with the button on the bottom left with the 3 lines. You want to make sure you are adding this before the order is included on a settlement and before it's moved to completed. You will be adding this charge from the Extra Pay tab on the left. You will see a similar screen to the Charges tab of the driver's profile. You can click on Add and select your driver. If there is a team, you'll be able to select which driver you are associating this extra pay to. Once you click OK, you will see a similar intermediate charge window where you will be able to select from deductions, reimbursements, or extra earnings. You can then fill out the charges code, invoicing company, expense account, and amount you want to be associated with this charge. The date will be automatically filled out with the order's delivery date, but you can override if needed. Then you can add your description and click OK to save. This charge will now be visible specifically under this order on the driver settlement. Please see our Generating a Driver Settlement video for more information on how it's formatted. In this video, we will learn how to generate settlements for your drivers. Settlements are going to be the statements that show the driver's base pay on the work that they did and include any deductions, reimbursements, and earnings affecting their pay. You'll be generating new settlements under the Generate Settlements window under the Accounting tab. This will open a new window where you'll be able to generate settlements for drivers. On the top left-hand side, you'll see a button to toggle between generating settlements for drivers or carriers. This will be selected as drivers by default, and you should keep it as drivers unless you are doing brokerage work and generating a settlement for another carrier. Next, you will see a cutoff date to where you will be selecting the last date for any delivered orders you would like included into the settlement. This will be filled out by default as today's date, but you can input any day that you would like. Under the cutoff date, you will see another field now for settlement date. Here you will be inputting the date of the actual settlement. For example, if you are generating settlements on Wednesdays, but you want them to be paid out on Friday, you can change the settlement date to be that upcoming Friday, which it will show on the settlement PDF generated. You will then be selecting the settlement company. You will see all of your invoicing companies listed here from which you would like the settlement to be coming from. For example, in the case where you may be booking loads under one company and generating settlements from another, you will have the option of selecting which company you want the settlements to be coming from. Then you will be choosing which driver or drivers you would like to generate a settlement for. By clicking the blue plus button on the left-hand side, you will see a few options to select from. You have the option of generating a settlement for just one driver, for all drivers, or by types of drivers, being CD, company drivers, OO, owner-operators, and LPD, lease purchase drivers. Remember, you will only see unpaid or uncharged transactions within the cutoff period for this settlement. If you select driver, being only one driver, you will see an intermediate window pop up where you can start typing the driver's name and all matches will start showing, from which you can select and click OK. You will then only see this one driver populate if he has data for the time period. You can remove him by clicking the X next to his name. For this example, we will select multiple drivers. If your drivers have their own companies or are being paid as 1099, you will have to make sure that they have a Pay to Vendor selected under their profile. If they have one input, then this vendor's information will be listed under the driver's name on the list in smaller letters, and the settlement PDF for this driver's transactions will be made out to the information under the vendor's profile instead of the driver's personal information. You can double-click on the driver's name here, and it will give you a shortcut to their profile to make any changes there if needed. Once you have the required drivers selected, you will have all of them listed on the left-hand side with the ability to scroll through the list and search for specific drivers in the list with the search bar above their name. This will be helpful if you are generating settlements for a lot of drivers at one time. The workflow of generating settlements will be selecting which transactions you want to include on the settlement from order movements, charges, recurring charges, fuel card transactions, express codes, and tolls, where you can see it listed out on the right side of the page. You will have the ability to double-check information, make any last-minute changes, and even add additional charges before approving and processing the settlement. When you have a driver's name highlighted on the left-hand side, you will only see a list of transactions associated to this specific driver on the right. On the bottom, you will see a summary total of his settlement. This will show you their payee ID, totals of miles, income, deductions, other charges, and a total calculation of the settlement. First, you'll start by confirming the movements you want to include into the settlement. You will see a checkbox next to the movement ID number that, when selected, will include those moves to the driver's settlement and basically pay the driver for them when processed. As you can see, the total at the bottom is changing when you add or remove moves. You will also see a lot of other order-related information here that you can double check. If you click on the line of the movement, you can also open the order directly from this screen for more information or to make changes if you have adequate permission. You will have 3 fields that are editable per movement to make any last-minute changes associated to a driver's settlement. They will be distance, gross pay, and pay method. You can double-click on each field and make any necessary last-minute changes. Please bear in mind that the pay method, which is pulled from the driver's profile at the time he was dispatched on this order, and can be directly related to the distance or gross pay. If the driver is getting paid by miles, when you adjust his distance, then the paycheck amount for the move will be changed. Let's say, for example, you want to change the pay method for one movement, so the driver is getting a different percentage. You can go to a percentage driver here. You can double-click pay method and select the corresponding method for percent and put in the needed number. And you will see then the paycheck is adjusted by the new percentage taken from the gross pay. You can also adjust the gross pay amount to make changes. Another example to change would be if you only want to provide a flat amount for a particular move. For example, $100 for an empty move because the driver had to deal with some unforeseen circumstance. You can double-click on Pay Method and select Movement Flat Rate and input your amount. This will only change the amount of this particular move. Do not confuse this with the flat salary pay method, as this will only be visible on the movements if the pay method of flat salary was originally under the driver's profile to get the same payment amount every settlement, independent on how many movements they did. You will also have some shortcuts available to you by right-clicking with your mouse. This will pop out another intermediate window that will allow you to mark check this page, another intermediate window that will allow you to adjust the visible columns, check or uncheck all transactions of this driver specific transaction section, as well as mark something as paid. When you mark something as paid, you will be removing it from the screen and not allowing it to be generated on this or any future settlements. Please make sure to fully understand this before making use of this functionality. For example, if this was an order that got paid out already in an uncommon situation and you don't want to include it on the settlement and you don't want to pay it out in the future either, you can select Mark as Paid. This will remove that line from the list. Let's say this was done on accident and you want to bring this transaction back to pay it out. You can right-click again on any other line and select Show Marked as Paid. This will make visible again any transactions marked as paid, and they will be highlighted in gray. Let's say you want to make this transaction available to be included on the settlements again. You can either right-click on it and select Mark as Unpaid, and it will remove the gray highlighting to make it available, or you can simply select the checkbox next to the line and it will be brought back as available and selected to be included on this settlement. Typically, this will only be used in very specific and infrequent situations, but still a very important function to understand. Let's continue with our example by making sure we have all the movements selected we want to include. Now we can move on to our next tab at the top, being Charges. This will function in a similar way to the Movements tab, where you are selecting the charges you want included by checking the box next to the charge ID. The only difference here is you will also be able to create charges from this screen by right-clicking and selecting Create Charge. This will open a new intermediate window where you can input the charge details and save accordingly. It is very important to keep in mind that for this charge to show up, it has to be within the cutoff date period. You also have the option of splitting charges. For example, if you want to add only half of the charge on this settlement and a remaining amount for a following settlement. You can double-click on the charge and click on Split in the top right-hand corner of the window. This will open another smaller window to input the amount you would like to include on this settlement from this charge, and then the remainder will be split into another charge that will be available for other settlements. As you can see, the charge has been split into two different lines. You can then make sure you have all needed charges selected. This section will show any one-time charges along with recurring charges broken down. In the Recurring Charges tab, you will be able to see which recurring charges are associated to any charges available to be included on this settlement. You can edit the recurring charge setup from this screen by double-clicking on the charge. You can then make any necessary adjustments. You can also create new recurring charges from this tab if needed by right-clicking and selecting Create Recurring Charge. If there are any fuel card transactions, express codes, or tolls available for this driver and deductible from his settlement, you will see them in these tabs to the right and will be able to also select which ones you want to include, mark as paid, or make any last-minute changes by double-clicking on each of the lines if needed. Now that you have selected all transactions you want included on this driver's settlement and made sure that the totals on the bottom look good, you can now approve this settlement. This is in essence saving your selections for this driver and allowing you to move on to the next. You can approve the settlement for this driver by clicking the box next to their name or clicking the Approve button at the bottom. See how the Approve button on the bottom changes to Process when you have the settlement approved. When you have approved settlements, you will see a total down at the bottom appear with the total amount of all settlements to be processed and for how many drivers they are for. You will also have additional shortcut buttons available. Next to the word Drivers, you have a gray button with 3 lines. This will allow you to approve all, disapprove all, or process all settlements with their current selections. Down next to the blue button on the bottom left, you will have a button that will allow you to download the settlement of the driver you have highlighted to your computer without actually generating a settlement in the TMS. This is helpful in cases where you want to see how the settlement PDF will look beforehand before generating and sending a settlement over to a driver. The button next to it is a refresh button that will refresh transaction information in case you or another user is making any changes in the background or want them to be reflected on this settlement screen as well. Once you have all of the settlements that you would like approved, You can then process them with one click of the Process button at the bottom. This will then remove all selected charges from this screen so they cannot be paid out twice, and save settlements under each driver's profile, as well as the settlements history page. The settlements can also be emailed to the driver while processing if you would like. Please see the settlements section of the Accounting Preferences video in regards to setting this up. As you can see, the settlement is saved under the Settlements tab of the driver's profile, which you can view it, download it, and email it from there. You can also view it from the Settlements History page under the Accounting tab. Here you will have a history of all settlements generated in the TMS with a variety of sortable and filterable information. Let's view one to see an example of how it looks by double-clicking on the one we want to see, or highlighting it and clicking Edit. You can view the settlement with the View button at the top. As you can see, you will have your settlement company information along with the settlement dates and cutoff, the pay to information of the driver or vendor, and all moves broken down with all corresponding charges, fuel, express codes, and tolls if applicable. You will also see a total summary at the bottom with a year-to-date available. You will have the ability to adjust the columns and visibility of certain information on the settlements, as well as to more customize it to only show the information that you want your drivers to see. You can also make changes or revisions to a settlement after it has been generated if any mistakes were made. Please see our Editing a Settlement and Accounting Preferences videos, respectively, for more information on this. Let us know if you have any more questions about generating a settlement in the TMS. Thank you.